I was in the United Kingdom and we're having a conversation around corruption in Nigeria. And my friend who came from Canada asked one of the professors who was sitting down, because he's also a professor in University of Vancouver, and asked him, how much does a professor earn in Nigeria in dollar terms? And he said it's less than $200. And then he asked, why are people complaining about corruption? Because for him, the average cost of training a student in Canada from primary school to a university degree minimum in public institution is about $25,000. So he's wondering, how will a professor train his child with $200 per month? So I think these are the issues that we must also look at.
This is Souq Business Landscape. Now, ASUU have sealed a new agreement to end university strikes, university disruptions. The federal government and the Academic Staff Union of Universities have unveiled a renegotiated agreement aimed at ending years of disruption in Nigerian tertiary academic system. Now, the deal was announced on Wednesday and is expected to address recurring strikes that have shut campuses nationwide and stalled academic calendars, leaving students uncertain about graduation timelines. The 2025 agreement concludes a renegotiation process that began in 2017. Yes, you heard us. And that particular review was for the 2009 pact between the government and ASUU, which was due for revision in 2012. Officials say the prolonged talks reflected deep disagreement over funding, conditions of service, and university autonomy. Several committees has been set up over the years by previous administration, including panels led by Wale Babalaki, Musali Jubril, Nimi Briggs, all failed to produce an agreement. Stakeholders hope that the new deal will restore stability, rebuild trust, and allow universities to focus on teaching, research, and national development after years of uncertainty for students, lecturers, and families nationwide. Because most times we look at the students, look at the lecturers, we forget the families that send these kids to school in the first place. Dear Doc, we've seen this come from 2009. We've seen 2013. Before 2013, there was 2012. Now we are getting 2017. Now it's 2025. Do you see this ending now?
I wish I was a prophet. Or maybe I'll be able to say it tomorrow. One of the questions that I've always asked is the fact that it's one thing to negotiate agreement, and another thing for the major stakeholders have the wherewithal to ensure that the agreement that is signed, that it can be implemented. And I think that's been the really basic challenge with all the previous agreement. It's not difficult for a government to say yes. But when you say yes, you're also looking at your capacity to be able to pay. And these issues, for me, are things that are created by the government itself, to be very honest. We don't need as many universities as we have, because people tend to equate literacy with university education. By UNICEF definition, literacy is your ability to be able to read and write.
Yes.
And everybody should be able to get that at nursery level. So what that will mean is that we don't need to really be churning out paper certificates. We just need people with the right skill to drive the economy. But over the years, what have we seen? Argument from NUC's angle. They have a lot of people who are applying for JAMB, and therefore everybody who applies for JAMB must find his space in the university. I don't think that argument is plausible. University education is expensive. Now, if government had very few of them, maybe real 5, 6, or 10 functional federal universities, that's actually empowering people to drive administration. And they have a lot of monotechnics and polytechnics where people can actually get real hand-on skills to drive development. We don't likely be in a space where we are at the moment, that university professors are not well paid. I had a very sorry observation some 2 months ago. I was in the United Kingdom and we're having a conversation around corruption in Nigeria. And my friend who came from Canada asked one of the professors who was sitting down, because he's also a professor in the University of Vancouver, and asked him, how much does a professor earn in Nigeria in dollar terms? And he said it's less than $200. And then he asked, why are people complaining about corruption? Because for him, the average cost of training a student in Canada from primary school to a university degree minimum in public institutions is about $25,000. So he's wondering, how will a professor train his child with $200 per month? So I think these are the issues that we must also look at, because if you have 10 professors, you can decide to pay them well. But if you have 200,000 professors, you have to share the money that you will use in paying the 10 to pay the 200,000. And that's where we find ourselves. So if we must find a system that is really highly rewarding, I think the architecture of the public university, the way we look at it, that every Nigerian must be a graduate, we have to rethink it so that those who really desire to be graduates and become managers, then you are able to actually allow them, if state needs to give scholarship to people like we currently do, that will really see people who are cerebral in their mind and they can think properly, but they are from poor families and they cannot access this quality education, and we can see in them, in the elementary schools, that they have potentials. The state can fund them and give them quality education. So by making it that everybody must be a university, which again has raised the expectation for society, which is also responsible for our non-productivity, because we have moved away from where we have comparative cost advantage to places where we don't have comparative cost advantage. For anybody who has a degree, he wants a white-collar job, and then you don't have the industries, you don't have the companies to engage them. And then they don't want to go to the farm or do something that is a little pretty dirty. And then people are on the street. So these are the conversations I feel are quite important, because it's very easy to sign an agreement, and I think it's just pen. You just sign, and this other person sign. But when it comes to implementing, then take a good photograph. So once it comes to implementation, that's where you find the real nitty-gritty come to bear, and the government is looking at it, because we are going to say by the end of this year, we are talking about 2027 budget, and people see the volume of deficit in that budget and say, why will government be doing this deficit? But they are product of agreements.
Okay, before I come to you, you mentioned something that most people did not take cognizance of. Okay, we have Professor Chris Piuna here. Hello, good morning, sir.
Morning.
Good morning, Prof. How are you doing, sir?
I'm fine, thank you, and compliments of the season.
Same to you, sir. Congratulations on the agreement that was just signed yesterday.
Yeah, congratulations to all of us, all those who are concerned about the Nigerian university system.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now, my name is Souq, John Rogers Souq. I have Olumide here, and I have Dr. Dahosa here. We will not take much of your time, but we want to look at where we've come from before this agreement was signed, and also see possibility of implementation, because that is the most important thing, not just signing of the agreement. Now, can you just take us from 2009 to now 2026 and tell us From your side of it, to what extent do you see implementation happening on what was signed on the agreement?
Well, thank you very much. We signed an agreement in 2009 with the Yar'Adua administration. And by the way, President Yar'Adua was one of the most friendly leaders we had in regards to education. And so it was not difficult to start implementation. I think Nigerians may still have their views, but President Yar'Adua was perhaps one of the most sincere, honest leaders that we've had. So we had no issues at that time in signing the agreement or commencing the implementation. We had issues after his demise, and that is in the public domain, when governments, people that were part of his government, came out to say the agreement was not implementable, that ASUU forced the hands of government, and that the financial implication at that time cannot be achieved. But over time, we continue to have people like that in government who will say one thing and do another. So that has been our history with government when it comes to agreements. However, when we started this journey with this government about 14 months ago, when the Tinubu government set up the Alhaji Yaya Ahmed committee, we worked with speed. There were delays, all right, but if you compare what we consider as delay for in 14 months with what the last administration couldn't do for the 8 years that they were in power, you will perhaps give these people a credit for what they've done so far. So now we have an agreement signed on the 23rd of December 2025. The agreement was not signed yesterday. It was signed on the 23rd of December 2025. What is left now, like you rightly pointed out, is the implementation. As part of the agreement, we had an implementation monitoring committee that was set up, and that committee will be coordinated from the National Universities Commission. It is composed of ASUU, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Labor, National Salaries and Wages Commission, NUC itself, and related agencies. The aim of the monitoring, let's stop here. The aim of the agency is or the committee to the implementation. That is what would be done. We believe that if they are serious about education, we will not have a problem.
Thank you very much, Prof. We want to say congratulations. You said not just to you, but to us and Nigerian students, the universities, and parents alike. Because most times when people talk about these issues, they forget that it's actually parents that bear a lot of the brunt, sending their words out there. And even the university lecturers are also parents themselves and have children in the university system. Now, if we're able to get this off, we will not have any more strikes. That's what we're looking forward to. Then we're also looking at the quality of education. From this agreement, aside salaries, aside remuneration, aside the new allowance that is coming to the high caliber academicians, are we also looking at our campuses, our chairs in schools, Are we also seeing or looking forward to having an education system that in a matter of time will be comparable or even better than what people are leaving this country for outside?
Well, yeah, I think that is what these agreements set out to achieve. We have a place for increased funding to public universities in this agreement. And our target is that there should be one, there should be 15% allocation of the national budget to education. And we understand that government cannot give us the 15% at a go. So what we do, or is what we did rather in the agreement, is to have a 2.5% increase over 3 years, which would bring us close to 15% of the budget. We also have in this agreement 1% of GDP to be dedicated to research and development. If these two key things are achieved by government, quality of education will improve naturally, because funding will ensure that our laboratories are equipped. Funding will ensure that our staff are trained properly. Funding will ensure that infrastructure is in place. Students learn in an atmosphere that is conducive and could help them bring the best, in themselves. If research is properly funded, the research is the cornerstone of development. Our education will show by the quality of research that we produce. So, if these things are done, certainly we would not have to continue to cry about the quality of education in this country. We will train students that when they go out of this country, people will actually wonder whether they are from the moon. So we believe that quality of education will improve through this agreement. It's certainly not just about.
All right, sir. Good morning, Professor Pewuna. My name is Olumide Shokoya. I'd like to ask a question here. There's a concern. Now, this agreement is a beautiful one, but some people are also wondering, what about state universities, state-owned universities? Does this agreement cover them, or will there be another agreement drafted? Second question, are you also looking into autonomy, running whether state or federal universities by itself, generating revenues through other means rather than waiting for the federal government?
Thank you very much. I'm sorry, but I think I took it for granted that we have an understanding of the agreement. It covers autonomy, academic freedom, funding. It covers governance issues in universities. These are the different aspects of the agreement. So, yes, it's not just about salaries. All these areas are properly covered. That's one. On your first question, whether it includes state universities, historically, in setting up the federal government scheme, state universities are taken into consideration. So we have pro-chancellors of state universities as members of this team. So we signed the agreement with them. And because we've signed the agreement with them, they can implement this salary increase. They can implement the issue of autonomy in state universities. They can, ask our branches at the state level can ask government to improve budgetary allocation to education in their states. So this thing covers all of us. ASUU is one. And when ASUU negotiates, we negotiate for all our members. There is no federal or state universities in ASUU. We just have one ASUU. And we believe that state governments would implement this agreement, wholesome. That is what we believe. We know what usually happens when there's a national minimum wage and how state governments react. But we hope that because of the importance of education, we will not have that problem with state governments. So yes, our state universities are part of this agreement.
Thank you, Professor Chris.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
And congratulations on your election as the ASUU president, and in your tenure, we're seeing peace gradually returning to the campus. But let me just find out, because listening to the Minister of Education yesterday on a sister station, he was so elated, especially looking at some of the things that were agreed on this agreement. And one of the things he talked about was the fact that TED Fund now will be deployed to build infrastructure, build laboratories, and libraries for public universities. I want to find out, in this agreement, are there accountability mechanisms that have been put in place to ensure that every year we are able to measure the milestone of the deployment of this fund? Also, given the fact that, of course, the education system is warehoused in a ministry where the MDAs are used to envelope system in terms of budget releases. Is this agreement also putting education, especially tertiary education funding, on a first line charge, just the way the National Assembly is, so that we won't have issues that the Accountant General has not released funds and we cannot implement these things that are written in this agreement?
Yeah, one of the key achievements of this agreement is that we discarded the envelope budgeting system, and we took the needs-based budgeting approach, which is what we've been having over time before this envelope system was introduced. So our budgeting would be needs-based, and universities would make their budgets based on what is needed in their institutions. So on that matter, that is what it is. On your first question, actually, I think I answered it earlier on when I said there is a monitoring committee that has been set up as part of the agreement, which will be coordinated at the NUC. So that is how we can measure milestones. Are states implementing this agreement? How is the federal government faring in implementing the agreement? Our budgets progressively heading towards the 15% mark that we agreed, or they are stagnant, or in fact put in reverse gear. These are all aspects that the monitoring committee would ensure we achieve.
Yeah, let me also find out, is ASUU also making plans, because we also know that resources are always not enough to go around. That universities are marked to benefit at different phases, so that everybody know when they will benefit.
Sorry, I didn't get that question. I didn't understand what...
Yeah, what I'm saying is that even if you do a 15%, it cannot go around the numbers of federal universities that we have, that we can see significant progress. I'm also saying, is ASUU also working toward having university designated for a certain period of time for this development to happen, so that we can have well-equipped laboratories and libraries, and then of course we have, ABU, Unilag in the first 2 years, we're having UNN and other university in the next 3 years, and then we can face it like this so that implementation can be easy.
Well, no, not exactly. We are not thinking of facing the implementation of the budget that way. We believe believe that if the federal government increases budget this year by 2.5% from what it was last year, more money will reach universities generally. Like I said, the budget will be needs-based. So if ABU Zaria wants laboratories, University of Jos may want lecture halls. So once that increase is being made, all of that would be captured properly. So that is the way we expect the budget to be. We are not doing it in phases. You just do this. First generation universities do that. Third generation universities, no. Each of them will have their needs and they will make their budgets based on their needs. That's what it is.
Thank you so very much.
All right, sir. Thank you very much, Professor Piwuna. I'd like to ask one more question. Different ASUU presidents have come up, they've signed different agreements. We've seen different agreements come up here and there. So my question now is, what makes this particular agreement? I remember some weeks back, some months back or some years back, I interviewed Professor Akinwole, who actually was the president of the UI chapter. And he brought documents, different documents signed by the federal government and ASUU. So my question is, what makes this agreement different? And how confident are you that the federal government will not renege on this particular agreement?
Well, yes, there have been different agreements signed by ASUU. The president of ASUU is just a messenger that is sent to sign the agreement on behalf of ASUU. So agreements are not tied to president, but the union itself. That's the way we operate in ASUU. But furthermore, what makes this particular agreement different? This agreement has some components that the previous agreement did not have. The 1% research funding from GDP is something that was not there before. The establishment of the National Research Council, it was not part of our previous agreement. This agreement also covers specifically how lecturers who retire will go with their full salary. It's been part of the Pension Act, but now it's clearly spelled out in our agreement. Those are some of the highlights of this agreement. Having said that, the other reason why we think or hope, I think that's the right word. The other reason why we hope this agreement will be different is because President Ahmed Tinubu was involved in these negotiations indirectly, but we have information that he was briefed at every step of the way. It wasn't as if the Yahya Ali Ahmed committee was meeting with us for 14 months, and when the 14 months were over, they took the agreement to him. No. At every stage, there were things he suggested to them. There were things he said, no, don't do it this way, do it that way. So he was part of the negotiations, and that to us is a big plus. If we cannot trust our president that what we've signed will be implemented, then this country is doomed. And we don't think Nigeria is doomed. We believe that we have a president and he's involved in this matter, and we take our president very seriously. We believe that this agreement will be different because of him.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Prof. I know you have a very busy day. You have to, while you are still on transit and you're part of this, I want to say thank you very much. To everybody out there, to every parent out there, let's look forward to better days ahead. We hope that when we call you when you are more settled, you'll be able to sit in and we'll have a better discussion next time, sir.
Actually, I would have loved to say the last thing to parents and students. We would like to thank them for their patience and their understanding over the years. We also want to thank them for supporting us when we embark on actions to achieve this kind of gains. Unfortunately, they went through pains, parents and students. It was not deliberate. Childbirth is one of the most painful things for women, but we get a child afterwards, and the child is useful, he's resourceful, he's productive, and we are proud of that child. And that is how we see this struggle. Despite the pain, they stood with us, and we truly want to thank them for their patience over these years.